So to continue, I was sitting there harmlessly doing no one any ill when I discovered that the small company that I had formed in Woodstock, up in the Catskill Mountains, in a little theatre that hadn't been a theatre for a long time and was in the woods, which is a strange place for a theatre to be. You come out of the theatre and to your astonishment there's no streets, no hooting cars, or at any rate such a roadway as there is in the woods among trees, and you are in a land very far from the metropolitan relationship that theatre has with itself from the very beginning, from the Oresteia onwards, when Athena makes it clear to us, or Aeschylus makes it clear to us through his Athena, that the city is in fact the condition, the precondition of theatre, as it is the precondition of justice, because only in a city can there be a court, and only through a court can there be justice, and only through theatre can we sing the conjunction of the two, metropolis and justice. So it's very unlikely that you will come out of a play and find yourself in the woods unless you've stepped into another play. It's a very, very strange, unnatural and fascinating thing to have happen to you when you've been transported already into strangeness, whatever it is that the playwright has put in light upon the stage, and then you come out onto another stage, the stage that is nature, rather than the situation that is the city, that is the normal mother of theatre. So I had come upon this little more or less defunct theatre of extraordinary magic, where it turned out that a number of celebrated actors had begun their careers, but which had been disused for a long time, and which didn't even look like a theatre inside. It had been built as a pottery. It had a brick wall and some wooden walls and a fireplace on stage. Wonderful. Anyway, it had a magical feeling to it which has nothing to do with its physical properties, but everything to do with its metaphysical properties, the air. And I may have already gone on to describe my father's practice. My father, a celebrated theatre actor, as well as a movie actor, who on arrival in a strange country on tour with a play would send his wife off, to her displeasure I rather suspect, send her wife off with the luggage as though she was a part of it to their glorious theatre suite to unpack, while he took a cab to the theatre where he was to perform in that week, just to enter and sniff the air. And I always thought, the actor. So I, in a vastly smaller way, was sniffing the air as the playwright. In this case, it was not the actor in me, or maybe it was, but it was the actor surrendering his title to that of playwright and thinking, something needs to happen in these four walls. And it did, and our little theatre company was in existence when we were bequeathed a huge quantity of costumes for a play that had been written about, or set perhaps, in the Prague of the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II at the end of the 16th century. And the sumptuous costumes that I think they had made and not rented came our way, so it seemed, as many a theatre manager probably has in the past, seeing that suddenly you inherited a set for, I don't know, a theatrical trial in 1910, and then you think, I've got all the costumes, well, I'll just have to write the play. As this was pretty much what occurred to me, and is why the play is largely set in the Prague of Rudolf II. But that provides a very poor description of the kind of play that Magus is. It started to be the different kind of thing that it is when I was investigating the Prague of Rudolf II. I never do much investigation, and I may have mentioned this before. I strongly urge the playwrights, the budding playwrights among you, to heed my sooth, which is never start with more than 3 facts about your play. Facts don't help. Facts get in the way, and you'll probably have to make considerable effort to this is only apple juice, I'm sorry to have to tell you, to restrict it to 3 facts, but restrict it nonetheless. 3 facts get together in the dark, rather like Orlick Trellis, the man who gets together with the other characters in Flann O'Brien's At Swim Two Birds, and while the author is asleep, they write a story about him. That's a really good description, in fact, in that great novel of At Swim Two Birds, of how creation happens. While you, the supposed creator, are sleeping, your characters write the play for you, or write the play of you, write you into the play. So while I was looking for my 3 facts, I stumbled across a quite astonishing one. One of the titles of the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II was Duke of Auschwitz. I drink to allow myself a dramatic pause. XII, as it was called then, it still is. It has a Polish name as well as a German name. And so this is astonishing. Auschwitz is an unimpressive place. It's now an inglorious place. I was going to say it's now inglorious for quite different reasons. It's now gloriously inglorious, famously inglorious. In those days it was just plain inglorious, not a very significant piece of the map of the world. But it happened to be one of his many titles, and I was just poleaxed by the idea somehow of this very drab place on this very drab plain, in this very drab weather that belongs to Auschwitz, which I have visited many a time for reasons that have nothing to do with playwriting, where relatives of mine were interned, but not in fact killed, although they were killed in other death camps. And so I was poleaxed by this, and it led me to seek a subliminal connection here that would spread its web across the play. I think I had already recognized that it's a very interesting moment, Rudolf II's reign, bringing together people like John Dee, Elizabeth I's magician and mentor, who certainly would have visited Prague at that point. Shakespeare probably didn't, but could have visited Prague, and I have Shakespeare in my play as a young person, disreputable young person, unreliable, a delinquent young person, even, as great men should be at an early stage in their careers, and chasing a woman, as I like to think Shakespeare would have brought Shakespeare to Prague, if anything could have done. And Shakespeare, the young Shakespeare, the cut-purse, the delinquent. Also, the great Miguel de Cervantes, who is not involved here in the Quixote, but in trying to make some money as, well, he had been a mercenary in the Spanish cause, and he now turns up in my play, not in the real Prague, although he could perfectly well have been there, but in Rudolf's Prague in this play, in need of somebody to help run their armies. So he's there as well as Shakespeare and John Dee, and all sorts of fascinating characters who are there mainly to provide a background for a most unlikely other person. It turns out to be Kafka. Why it turns out to be Kafka, I don't know. You wake up one morning and it's Kafka. And in the play really is set in a hospital, not in Prague at all, but a hospital in which Kafka's sister Ottilie, he had a real sister Ottilie, is living under the delusion, having a protracted mental breakdown under the delusion that she is married to Rudolf II, Holy Roman Emperor. And all Kafka's attempts to prise her back into reality has failed, and he discovers, and we discover at the beginning of the play, that he has found no alternative to entering her delusions to find her and to bring her back. But in entering her delusions and dressing as he does for the court of Rudolf II, he finds himself carried away inside the cloud of her delusions. And we too find ourselves there in Prague with Kafka and his sister, and in her world, a world from which he has to try and extract her. A world of many plots involving Shakespeare and Cervantes, but in particular a world of one driving need on Kafka's part to get the hell out of there. He is fortunate in having there in the Prague of the period the great John Dee, the magician, who can move around in space and time, and might be able to send him and Otla back to the 20th century, but he's also able to see something of the 20th century. And so the question arises, does Kafka really want to take Ottilie back to what awaits her between the world wars? In Prague, it's a terrible thought as to what decision to make if you're Kafka. Do you return her to what we regard as reality, which contains, as it happens, a concentration camp death, not only for her, but for her sister and her mother? Or do you leave her crazy in the Prague of 400 years before, 350 years before, where she imagines herself to be gloriously married to a notable prince, and although there are some problems associated with her position in the Prague of that period and the role that in her madness she has chosen herself, it's nonetheless a happy position with power over her own life, which will not be entirely returned to her if she is sent back to where she came from, because in that place she was not aware of what was coming, nor could she be made suddenly preternaturally aware of the future. She would have to simply live that future, which John Dee can see in all its awfulness. So what is Kafka to do? Leave her crazy, but relatively happy in her craziness, or render her once more sane with the terrible prospect in the world of her sanity? This is not a dilemma that is unknown to people who have crazy relatives. So this play then turned out, to my own surprise, to be about what you do with the contentment of craziness, if such a thing is available, and what is the value of this thing we prize so greatly called reality. Get real. Should Kafka and his sister get real, or should they not? So that turns out to be a play in which I was able to use both costumes that were available to me, to my surprise, and this extraordinary fact about the past of Auschwitz as a dukedom. But in particular, it showed me, as the other play showed me much more clearly, to which I shall come in the next video, it showed me the transformative essence of drama, how much it seeks transformations. Illusions and delusions are its name and its game. And that taught me something about what I might more usefully be looking for, more usefully than in the kinds of plays that I wrote when I was in my 20s, which were staged and well regarded, and won me even a page of the Saturday Review of the London Times, at a time when I was a young and beginning playwright, which a role which was flattering, but which won me little in the way of a living. A living I was able to make writing scripts for television and film, and which I only returned to, the living of a stage playwright, when I discovered this little theatre in the woods and wrote a dozen plays for it in a very different style and involving a very different hunt for the meaning of theatre, which, with your permission, I'll continue in the next video. Bye now.